Lions end up winning this game 24-6, sort of business as usual for the Lions, but closer than the scoreboard would indicate, I think. And we'll dig into that a little bit, certainly on Indianapolis' side of things. Let's look at the top 5 graded players for the Detroit Lions to start things out. Edge rusher Zadarius Smith. Boy, does this pay off pretty quickly. An 88.4 overall grade for the new Detroit Lion. Offensive tackle Taylor Decker with an 81.3. Wide receiver Tim Patrick with an 80.7. Guard Kevin Zeitler a 75.4. Then running back Jahmyr Gibbs with a 75.2 to round things out. Jared Goff in this one earning a 63.5 overall grade. And then on Indianapolis' side of things, wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr., top graded player with an 88.6. Edge rusher Latu with an 86.7. Defensive tackle Grover Stewart with an 82.9. Wide receiver Josh Downs a 78.9. Offensive tackle Mac on Cavs with 72.9. And then Anthony Richardson with a 76.6 overall grade. Not too bad over the last 2 games with Anthony Richardson. So certainly the floor seems to be a little bit higher over the last 2 weeks, but albeit it was a loss this week. Your stat that told the story. What do you got?
So it's kind of weird because usually we have something flashy with the Lions and they're scoring 50 points. They're doing something crazy we've never seen before, right? And I think there's some games where obviously they're that dominant. And this was a dominant game, 24-6, but I think this was a game where they dominated the little things. And my stat is the Lions only went 3 and out once. And what you get with this offense is, okay, they didn't score 45, 50 points in this game, but almost every single drive, they still do something positive. When you talk about influencing field position, when you talk about extending drives on third downs, when you talk about just the little things, not turning the ball over, right? The Colts did not have a drive start outside their own 30-yard line. And the only times they got to 30 were touchbacks after scores from the Lions, right? So you're talking about even little things like, okay, we got 1 or 2 first downs on this drive, and we got to somewhere around midfield, and Jack Fox on this day, he had 4 punts inside the 20. Field position and just kind of slowly grinding things down and making positive plays, that's where the Lions lived in this game. They first, I guess any given week they can decide we feel like throwing for 400 yards, or they can just go, we're going to grind it out today and lean on the offensive line and Jahmyr Gibbs and just kind of get first downs and control the clock. Because I don't know if it's just they can do it because they feel like it or what. Because, it almost reminded me a little bit of remember when the Packers played the Colts and beat the Colts with Malik Willis?
Yes.
Kind of like that. Let's just control the clock and run right at them, be more physical, and get out of here. I think the Lions, the fact that they have that choice, that they almost have more than one identity that they can go with, it's an incredible asset. Because you watch them and throughout this game, you go, they didn't do anything freaky. They didn't do anything special. They just walked on the field and kind of did what they did. It felt very casual, didn't it? But I think the fact that it's so special at the NFL level when you can walk into a game like this and just do all of the little things right. And again, even if you didn't score points on said drive, all right, we pinned him back and we'll make a stop because we don't think Anthony Richardson can go 85 yards on us if he starts at his own 15 or his own 10 or whatever, and you're going to make him work for it, right? And all we got to do from that point is just prevent 80-yard touchdowns because that's really what Richardson wants at heart, right? And I don't think – and this is nothing – I'm not even going to go on any Anthony Richardson thing. There's nothing he could have done in this game. Honestly, couple of drives, but you don't get many opportunities – when the Lions are controlling a game like the way they are.
Well, look, I said that this game was closer than the scoreboard would indicate, and I meant it. I'll wrap sort of all my points. The stat that told the story, my most disappointing and my most impressive. My most impressive is that it was business as usual for the Detroit Lions. I mean, they could walk out of they can pop out of bed and it's basically 24 points at a minimum that they're going to score. They're just too efficient of an offense. So if you're not scoring high to low 30s in a football game, you're not going to beat the Lions. There's basically not a lot of examples over the last 2 years, really, where you could say that was the case. I think the Bucs. What did the Bucs beat the Lions by earlier this year? What was the final score in that game?
I know it went right down to the wire.
It was 16-20, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was 16-20 in that game. So that's got to be one of the only games where somebody beat the Detroit Lions by scoring less than 25 points. And so this was just another testament to there's nothing flashy from Detroit. They scored 24 points. They ended up winning the football game. Now, there are some stats that I want to get to. One, Colts penalties. To me, that was the stat that told the story of the whole game. Not only did they have 10 penalties for 75 yards of penalty yardage, these penalties, I got this stat from Jim Aiello, who is the senior editor for the NFL at The Athletic. Of those penalties, gains of 21 yards, 20 yards, 19, 7, and 30 were all negated by penalties. So that's not even including the penalty yardage that you then get assessed of the 75 yards of penalty yards that were assessed against you. You took away those plays because of the penalties that you had. So these are major gains in the game. 20, 21, 19, 30. Those are difference-making types of plays. Difference-making plays for drives and scoring drives and the scoreboard and all that. So to not only have as many penalties as they did, as much penalty yardage as they did, the unrealized yards and completions that they had because of those penalties also just compounds them only scoring 6 points in this game, because it really didn't look that bad on their side of things. You then get to the red zone. My most disappointing is kind of the Colts in the red zone. Lions, if you don't score in the red zone, you're not going to beat the Detroit Lions. Plain and simple.
Threes don't win. When
it comes to successful red zone drives. So successful means you scored a touchdown. It doesn't mean that there were no points yielded. It means, did you score a touchdown when you got in the red zone? Lions, 3 for 4. Again, business as usual. It's what the Detroit Lions do. Colts, over 2.
Can't have it.
2 field goals instead of 2 touchdowns. So you combine the fact that they could not capitalize in the red zone, and you have all of the everything that went into the 10 penalties that they had. That's the reason why this game's so lopsided. I don't know if they win this football game, but shoot, it felt a lot more like a 21-24 football game than a 24-6 football game. So that was, to me, just the stat that told the story of how we got here.
And the Colts, for the most part, didn't grade that poorly on offense.
No.
So there is kind of a disconnect there of like, well, they only scored 6 points, but they played well. They just made just enough mistakes against a team that arguably, look, you have almost no room for error when you're playing this Lions team, because first of all, when they get momentum, it can be an avalanche. We've seen that several times this year. And second, again, when you have a team that does all these little things right, they control field position, they stay on the field on third down, they don't beat themselves, right? You have to go out there and just outplay them. And for a team like the Colts, that means you have to play an absolutely perfect game.
Yep. Richardson led the team in rushing, 61 rushing yards, had 3 big-time throws in this one, had 2 turnover-worthy plays as well, but had the 3 big-time throws, which is high variance, but he's doing a lot of sort of what you would want him to do to win the game. So I think that's why you look at his score relatively high in this game, but albeit it wasn't enough, and the Detroit Lions just got the win. By the way, in the chat, somebody said that Jake Elliott also still in the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, he was on that team too. He was real young on that team.
Yeah, wow. So we got Brandon Graham, we got Lane Johnson, and we got Jake Elliott.
Good call. Okay. Yep. You forget kickers just last forever, right?
You can't forget kickers.
There's some teams in the last couple weeks I would like to. Real quick, most disappointing.
Go ahead.
You mentioned the run game. I'm not sure what's up with Jonathan Taylor, but another game, 11 carries and 35 yards, and for the season, he's only got a 58.6 rushing grade and forced 19 missed tackles. It just doesn't seem like. And you had mentioned when Richardson got back that he could be more efficient with the option game and Richardson back on the field, but Taylor just doesn't. Especially lately, just doesn't look the same. And I know the offensive line is a problem too. They're starting 3 rookies on the offensive line right now. That's a huge issue. But Taylor's not breaking tackles, not getting yards after contact. So it only gets harder if the Colts can't run the football. And then most impressive, I got to go with the trade acquisition. Za'Darius Smith. That's everything they wanted from him, right? I mean, 5 pressures, 2 more that were negated via penalty. Should have had 7. 70 run defense grade, 0 negative grades in run defense, 81.6 pass rush grade.
Yep.
Balanced, excellent football player. I need an update on the number, but when they traded for him, he had the 12th best pass rush win rate in the league. He's everything they could want in a replacement. Maybe not everything as a replacement for Aiden Hutchinson, but this is the type of pass rusher that they needed desperately, because they saw in those few weeks without Hutchinson or Smith where it was like, oh, we have nothing off the edge. The interior rush is elite. I'm sorry, Lee McNeil's an elite player.
You don't have to apologize. You start that by saying, I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize to me.
Throwing this out there, I
love Lee
I just
McNeil.
think people forget this interior rush for the Lions is a serious problem. They just needed something off the edge to complement it, and that's what Za'Darius has given them. I mean, if he continues to do that, then we keep the Lions at the front of the Super Bowl conversation, because that was the one big concern, is the pass rush without Hutchinson. But this was a day where you can feel like, okay, Za'Darius, this is the real deal. We can do this with him, and maybe there's still that outside chance you get Hutch back for the Super Bowl and see where it goes from there. But you got to get there first, and to get there, they're going to need Smith to continue to be really good.
It just feels like anybody who goes to the Detroit Lions, they play to the best of their ability. Coaching matters, man. Not that Za'Darius was not playing well before, but we've seen this before where teams will trade for a player and it's not always a guarantee that they're going to play the same or better.
You know what I love
look at Matthew Judon with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
They trade for Matthew Judon, and okay, like Judon, it's not like he was just totally dominant pass rusher, but it's not like he's that much better in Atlanta. And in fact, in ways, he's been a less efficient pass rusher during his time in Atlanta. So just because you traded for somebody and you brought them in doesn't even mean that you're getting the same player that you watched before you traded for them. So for Zadarius Smith to not only be the same player that he is, but playing better amongst this group, to me, it's just coaching, culture, the guys around you really matters, and nobody's better than that.
And you mentioned the coaching. One thing I love, because they don't do this on the Browns. They line him up in his spot, and that's it. If you look at the Lions right now, especially, I don't know if it started this week or it's just more rampant this week, or the first time I noticed it, they're moving him around. Like on third down, he could be standing in the A gap, he could be over the tackle, he could be wide nine. They're moving him all over the place. And it's just, a guy just trying to create matchups with maybe another, just a good matchup with the other team's offensive line, who's the weak spot and all that. And it's a lot of fun to watch right now. Like the next time when you watch the Lions next week, every third down, find out where Zadarius Smith is, because it's going to be a different spot every time. There's times where you can't find him and you're constantly trying to adjust. And you have the two big monsters in McNeil and Reeder in the middle. They're not only are they using his talent, obviously, because he's a talented player, but they're using him in different schemes now, really in a similar way that they would use Hutchinson, and they're moving him around and you can't find him, and they're messing with teams' protections left and right.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video, and if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.